That's true, because they're colourblind, aren't they? And transphobic.
Colourblind and transphobic, well, whatever they are. But
I saw a group of trans people celebrating this crossing. So
did you?
Yeah, I think so. In the picture, I'm not sure what you're saying completely.
Okay, fine.
Maybe the gay people didn't ask for the rainbow, but some people seem to have asked for this.
Okay, well, it just I don't know. I don't think it's many people. Is my point. It does.
Right.
It seems quite tokenistic. There seems to be a better way. And also, by the way, when you stand on a flag, that is the most disrespectful thing you can do, isn't it? That's the whole point.
Yeah. Good point.
So if you're putting it on the floor and encouraging people to trample all over it...
So actually, the dog is refusing to stand on it.
So the
he's
dog's
a hero.
pro
Yeah, he's a progressive dog.
Okay, fine. But that's right. Did you see, by the way, there was the rainbow flag crossing in America, and it went viral for a while because there were some tyre tracks on it, and someone said this was a homophobic attack. And, of course, it's because it's on a road. Anyway, they don't think this through, do they? Let's get another question. Chirag? No. Hello. Oh, there's the mic.
Should drunk MPs get priority wheelchair access?
Should drunk MPs
get priority wheelchair access?
Oh, OK. I think you're...
It's a satirical point.
It's a satirical point, but I know what you're talking. You're talking about the... So there were 3 MPs that got thrown off a flight to Gibraltar. Yes? And they were going to Gibraltar. I don't even think it was a holiday. I think it was an official thing. But they were going there. They got so drunk, one of them had to be removed on a wheelchair because she couldn't move. Is that right?
They were going to do an army thing. It was a military.
Is that right? Okay.
It was an armistice thing to meet the military.
Armistice Day in Gibraltar is the new Wayne Lineker Ibiza.
But I think the female MP of the 3, the female MP is now saying that she... it was to do with her medication. This is Charlotte Nichols. And I could, that could be true. What she said, she'd only have five drinks, I think she said.
That she remembered.
Actually,
yeah.
that's enough for me to need a wheelchair, I think.
It's amazing. She ended up in a wheelchair. It reminded me of when the lads used to go out back up north.
Yeah.
And they say, let's get paralytic. She got literally paralytic in a wheelchair.
She literally did.
Totally legless.
That's impressive.
No, but here's the thing.
No,
that's actually a very good gag.
In solidarity with...
but let's also apologise for it, just in case.
I'll apologise in case that offended anyone.
Apologies.
Just cover myself. Let's just do a blanket apology for anything these two say for the rest of the night, and I'll probably...
Let's pre-apologise now.
Pre-apologise now. That's what I do on Twitter these days. Someone's going to get offended by something, so we'll just say in the morning, I apologise for anything I'm going to say today. Anyway, the point about this is I worry about this in a way, because this idea that MPs shouldn't be human.
Yeah.
They're going to Gibraltar. What else are you going to do but get drunk? You know what I mean? Why shouldn't they just get drunk?
Totally. And to think that the war dead would be really upset that a couple of MPs got pissed on a flight to Gibraltar. Yeah, they'd want that for them. I think pissed is just on the edge. Can we say that?
Can we say? Let's not say swear words from now on.
It's too late now anyway.
Yes, I apologise if anyone was offended.
Apologies.
That's not a swear word.
It's not really a swear word, is it? I think we're OK with that, but I'm going to do it anyway, just in case.
What are people more offended with, that word or 3 MPs getting drunk on the way to Armistice Day in Gibraltar?
Well, it looks like people are more offended by the MPs, but listen, here's the thing. I think they were just human beings having a good time.
I'm offended.
Are you actually offended?
Yes.
OK, go on, Nick. Give the counter-argument.
Well, at first I thought it was, like the army probably got her drunk, in which case I didn't mind, but it wasn't that. She got drunk before she even left the plane. I can't relate because I don't drink or smoke or do any drugs. I'm a kind of throwback, idyllic figure, a 50s, almost a 50s kind of guy.
Like a 50s housewife.
So if I cannot drink to come on this show, surely an MP cannot get hammered on the plane to go and do an important official...
No, but it wasn't like they were going to get off the plane and then immediately do their official business. Like they were there for the night, so they would have had time to recover.
It was just the pre-lash.
It was just a bit... I accept Nick's point. I mean, Nick's very prudish. You will learn this by the end of the night. He's got like a very Victorian matronly figure, He's going to castigate you for any way you transgress. But the point about it is that had they got drunk before going into Parliament, say, or they were opening a supermarket and they were so drunk they couldn't cut the, a ribbon, that wouldn't be good. But I think just on their time off, why
It wasn't time off, it was an official visit. They were getting hammered at our taxpayers' money, Andy.
Oh, they didn't charge.
I sound like a guy on Question Time now. I don't have a red face in the crowd. Taxpayers' money.
Taxpayers' money.
I have no idea.
But you're on my side with this.
I think it's so difficult.
I just wanted to give some balance.
I'm going to get another question. You're here for the balance. Let's get another question from Leslie. Where's Leslie? Hi, Leslie.
Hello. Would you employ a family member if the taxpayer was footing the bill?
Would you employ a family member if the taxpayer was putting the view? So this is because it's been revealed that 1 in 8, that's quite a lot, 1 in 8 MPs are employing family members using taxpayers' money, and there is a kind of suggestion of nepotism here. Should you give jobs to your... I'm going to ask my cousin Nick Dixon about this, what you think.
Yeah, well, I was really worried about this story because I was worried it's going to damage the Tories' reputation for spotless integrity. Because they're doing so well already. I mean, this is another nail in the coffin for Tory sleaze, isn't it? They're all giving their... It's not just Tories, actually, it's MPs in general.
I don't think it is just Tories. This is the thing. I think this is nepotism across the board. It's quite natural in a way,
it's natural.
Hayden? Like, insofar as that if there was a job going at your business, whatever your business might be, you would probably... your brother, say, was out of work, you would... a job, wouldn't you?
It's a sort of neptocracy, isn't it? I noticed that Christopher Chope was the guy who was paying his wife most of any MP.
Is that right?
And he was also the upskirting guy who defended upskirting, which makes me wonder what he was paying her for. Maybe reparations, I don't know.
Goodness me. Are you verging on libel there? Let's... no, you were just speculating, so that's...
GB lawyers will sort that out,
I disavow everything that Hayden just said. But I think... Look, I don't think it's that big a deal. I think to an extent... If they're hiring someone who wasn't qualified simply because they were a blood relation, I would have a problem with that. I don't think these sorts of jobs are that, or am I wrong about that? I could be wrong about that, Nick. Do you know?
It's exactly what you say. It's this whole thing with Tory sleaze. It's sort of normal human behaviour, yet they also shouldn't be doing it. That's how I feel.
Right, OK.
You see what I mean? Because they're in a position that they have to be held to sort of higher standards. Even though, Andrew, if you had one of these jobs, you would definitely do sleaze. Do you know what I mean?
You think I would do sleaze?
You'd be all over the place.
I would be pure as the driven snow. How dare you?
You're right.
No, but this is the fundamental question: is do we hold our politicians to higher standards? Yeah. Should we hold our politicians to higher standards? Hayden, you're saying yes. Why?
We do hold them, but I think we need to give them a bit of a break. I can't think of a business where you wouldn't employ one of your family members if you possibly could.
Right.
I'm all for going for MPs, but there is a point. Maybe that's why they're drinking so heavily, because they're so depressed.
But I worry that this kind of stuff and these kind of sleaze stories, in a way, distract us from where we should be criticising. Because a lot of the times, they are doing all sorts of stuff. And the Tory government currently putting through this protest bill, this policing bill, that would mean that they would be able to shut down protests if they're a bit too noisy. I mean, they're putting forth this online safety bill, which is basically going to be the most draconian measures against free speech on the internet that we've seen for a long, long time. This is authoritarian stuff. Shouldn't we be criticising that rather than the fact that you've hired Auntie Phyllis
it's more important, you're right. But it can go too far, nepotism. I'm just thinking, do you remember when George Bush hired his son to be president? That was flagrant.
Nick makes a very good point there. So we're going to take a break now. But after the break on Free Speech Nation, we will be remembering the incredible career of Victoria Wood when we are joined by her official biographer, Jasper Rees. See you in 2 minutes.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now, it's been more than 5 years since we lost one of our greatest comedians, Victoria Wood. Her career took off in 1974 when she won a heat of the talent show New Faces, and she went on to become one of Britain's best-loved comics, paving the way for other female comedians in the process. Noted for her skills in observational comedy, in satirising aspects of social class, Victoria also wrote and starred in dozens of sketches, plays, musicals, films and sitcoms. Let's have a quick look at her in action. So Victoria Wood died way before her time, left a number of projects still to complete, and this week sees the publication of this book, Victoria Wood, Unseen on TV. Now, this is a collection of her unpublished work from throughout her career. Now, these were uncovered by Jasper Rees while he was undertaking research for his biography of Victoria Wood, which is a superb book called Let's Do It, and this came out last October. And Jasper joins me in the studio. Jasper Rees, everyone. So this is a fascinating story because you were working on the biography, and in the course of the research you had access to Victoria Wood's private materials and the various documents, and you came across these materials. Can you talk to us about what happened there?
Well, when I was commissioned to do this book, a vast sort of collection of boxes made their way around to my address. Right. I had to stack them in corners and shove them under beds because there were so many of them. And I slowly, over the course of the 2 years, I went through them looking for material, you know, the stuff that I needed to research Victoria's biography. And there was one box, I think it was box 12A, and I opened it and I found a folder in it which was a provisional as seen on TV material or something. So I opened it up and I started, and I started leafing through it. And I noticed you remember the continuity announcer played by Susie Blake in As Seen on TV, and there was something that I didn't recognise, and I thought it seems so familiar. But I can't actually remember having seen this on the telly. So I went through the whole show several times looking for it. Couldn't find it, and it was one of several of scripts written for her that were never used.
Yes.
And I went through this folder and other folders and other boxes, and eventually I found well over 50 scripts written for As Seen on TV that were not used, and then another 40 scripts from her other sketch shows.
I mean, it's fascinating seeing them put together. You've put them together chronologically, which I think is a really good idea because you can see the development of her craft as it goes along, and you can see in the early chapters when the work that she was writing before, sort of around the Wood and Walters period, because that was of course a series she did with Julie Walters before As Seen on TV, and it just sort of clicks into place when you get to the scripts that I hadn't read before. I mean, I know the shows very well, but reading these scripts from the As Seen on TV period, you can see she's found her voice at that point. And one of the things you've done very interestingly is you've said who was likely to play the roles.
When I know it.
When you're aware.
When I'm, and so, you know, because she puts on the script, she might just write Celia.
Yes.
In pencil. Yeah. Often, or other times there are casting scripts for sketches that were actually filmed and then discarded afterwards. Yes. So you know who was playing them. But often I've no idea who's playing them, and I sort of encourage the reader to do their own casting in their head. But yes, she was writing for actors who she'd got to know.
And why were these scripts not used? Because it does seem that a lot of them, the quality is very, very high for a lot of these scripts.
Well, she overwrote. It was because of Wood and Walters, where she always used to, she did interviews throughout her life in which she talked about Wood and Walters, and she loved joking about the fact that it was recorded in front of a geriatric audience and recorded in. She said she used to joke that there must have been a bus that had gone around Manchester saying, "If you don't like comedy, get on, because we've got a show for you." And it was it was filmed in the day and sort of filmed over many hours, and the energy in the studio Granada studio was obviously not high.
Yes.
So they didn't land a lot of these sketches, and she found it very demoralising, and she didn't have enough material, so she couldn't bring stuff in to replace the sketches that hadn't landed. So she thought, I'm never going to be that exposed again. So when she, you know, a few years later did As Seen on TV, she made damn sure that she had a good 10 minutes more material per show. And, you know, when she went on to do her subsequent Christmas shows over, you know, they're all very well known, but probably the best known is Victoria Wood with all the trimmings.
Yeah.
She had enough to do a second show.
So just a very prolific worker and someone who...
Yeah, well, she worked very hard, but she just didn't... She wanted to have much more material so that she was able to sift through it and say yes, yes, maybe no. and to give herself a choice. And this, as you say, you don't necessarily notice a drop-off between what actually made it onto the telly and what didn't.
No, I mean, there's one sketch which is called First Night, and this is where there's two sort of lovies backstage about to go on. And it's such a well-written piece, and it has such a great payoff. Yeah. And it's also designed for Celia Imrie and Jim Broadbent. But I can hear them. I mean, it's so clearly in their voices, and it could have worked just as well as any of the other scripts, and it's just not there. And I don't think that one was even made, was it?
Do you know what? I'm not sure. And I spoke to Jim Broadbent and Celia Imrie, and this is the thing that happens when you talk to people about work that was done nearly 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It was one day's work.
Yes.
They can't actually remember whether they made it or not. And indeed, when you talk to Duncan Preston, who was another of her, stalwart cast members, when I was asking him about things, he said this is what happens with Victoria Wood actors as opposed to Victoria Wood fans.
Yeah.
Is that the fans know the shows far better than the people who are in the shows. You talk to Julie Walters, she can't really remember what was made or what wasn't. Yeah, I mean, that sketch that you're referring to, I absolutely love that sketch.
Yeah,
but I think that fell by the wayside because her producer Jeff Posner said, look, this show is essentially taking the mickey out of TV. That's what it's for. And we can't have too many sketches about theatre, which is the other thing that Victoria loved lampooning. Yeah. So that was one of the things that went by the wayside, and there are other theatre sketches that went for the same reason.
It does make sense. We've actually got a clip, I think, of Victoria Wood performing stand-up, if we can see that. Let's have a look. The thing about that, I mean, clearly, the writing of that, the craft of that, it's so beautifully written. I actually saw her perform stand-up on many occasions. I remember seeing her at the start of a tour and the end of the tour, and the show had developed, and you could see how she was getting gags to work. Yeah. Is there any sense in these materials that you've looked through that she was a redrafter, or is it just right first time?
Not with the sketches, I would say no. Oh, yes, there are some sketches where you can see she's doing cutting and trying to make a longer sketch more economical and make things land more than they might have done in rehearsal.
Yes.
But I would say that with reference to the way a show might develop over the course of a tour, there's one particular... I've reproduced some of the character monologues that she did in her live tours, and some of them are published in previous books of hers, but others weren't. So I thought I'll go in and I'll find them and I'll transcribe them and I'll put them in the book. And there was one character who... or several characters actually, but one in particular, I noticed that there are 3 recordings in her archive over 3 nights in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And she was changing it and just, making slight alterations.
Yes.
Every night,
yeah.
And she was doing that with her husband, Geoffrey Durham, who was her sort of, effectively her director, who was saying this works, that works. So they were forensically working out what landed. I think what didn't.
It's very interesting. I mean, just reading your biography as well, and this idea of her, the way in which she developed the idea of the joke, and I've heard her say this in the past, a lot of the times it's about the rhythm, it's about the choice of words. Yeah. It's about how words land in the sentence. And you see this again and again, and she always said that this sketch she'd written for this review called In at the Death, which was late 70s, I think.
78.
At 78 at the Bush Theatre. Yeah. And she said that was the moment she knew how to write a joke, that she'd done it before, but now it just landed. And you've got that sketch in this new book as well.
I have,
you can see it, can't you?
Yeah. It was just so wonderful to find that sketch and because she always talks about this sketch as being this moment where it was like striking a gong and hearing a true note.
Yes.
That she wrote a perfect setup and a punchline.
Yes.
It's about a young woman who is... I won't do the joke well, by the way,
Give it a go.
For which I apologise. But anyway, it's about a young woman who she works in a library and she's fearful that she's pregnant. And she's very confused, this woman, and someone says to her, "Where are you in the menstrual cycle?" Sorry, say that again. "Where are you in the menstrual cycle?" "Taurus," she says. And that got an absolutely massive laugh every night at the Bush Theatre. And obviously I can't deliver Taurus as well as Julie Walters.
It's hard though, isn't it? The delivery is hard, but there's all sorts of lovely little quirks in that thing about her being accused of shoplifting, and she says, "Oh, well, a duvet fell in my shopping bag."
Yeah. She enjoyed that gag. She used it again, actually. She'd been a topical songwriter up until then.
Yes, on That's Life.
And trying to do it on that kind of thing on tour and on the radio, and it just wasn't working. And she'd not found a way of just telling jokes. And then she met Julie Walters in that show, at the Bush Theatre, which is a tiny show. It was seen by 90 people a night for only 3 weeks. But she had this one sketch that she wrote at very short notice just to fill a gap in the show. She went off to the ladies one lunchtime in rehearsals and came back with this sketch called Sex. And it changed her life. You could argue it changed the course of British comedy.
And perhaps it's because she had this figure of Julie Walters, who, you know, I mean, as you've pointed out in your book, that Victoria Wood was always very fastidious about who delivered her lines and how they delivered the lines, whereas Julie Walters just naturally got it. So completely understood the rhythms and the ideas and the intention and everything.
Absolutely. She knew, you know, they work. It's no coincidence that she kept on wanting Julie to be in her stuff, up to and including the script, the film script that she wrote, she wrote the first draft that's in her archive that she was still working on when she got ill at the end of her life. So Julie was her muse, because when they met, it was just like, you know, it was just like this fireball went up between these two extraordinary comedians. One was an absolutely brilliant writer, and one is a brilliant natural clown. But actually, if you look across at the rest of Julie's career, that she's a wonderful actress, and there's not that much comedy in the rest of her career.
No, she's one of those that can genuinely just do anything. She can turn her hand to the lot.
But it did make a huge difference meeting Julie Walters. And I mean, there are some sketches in this book that are written for Julie. And actually, I was trying to scratch my head thinking, because Victoria sort of took the mickey out of TV so much, I was thinking, well, what would she have done about this channel? And because she would have done something. But I think she actually sort of has done something, because there's this thing from her last Christmas show, Midlife Christmas, which is a sketch that she wrote for herself and Julie to do, and it was never made, I think because of Julie's availability.
Oh, really?
Called Middle-Aged News. So you have two sort of middle-aged women who are mainly worrying about their kind of not being able to read the screen, and
well, that's just me in a nutshell. But listen, Jasper, thank you so much for coming on to the show. This is the book, just to remind everyone, it's called Unseen on TV. It's really worth checking out. Thank you very much, Jasper Rees.
Thank you.
Up next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be joined by Joe Bartosh, who this week wrote about the growing influence of the charity Stonewall on the government's trans policy. See you in a minute.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. So later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Hayden and Nick. And we're going to help members of our audience deal with their unfiltered dilemmas, so don't miss that. Now, in an article for The Times, Joe Bartosh has revealed that, according to a former aide of the Prime Minister, the government are allowing Stonewall, the LGBT charity, to dictate government policy on trans rights. It's a very interesting article. And in this article, the former government aide describes the unparalleled influence that Stonewall has, and that this was having a chilling effect on fair debate in government about trans issues. So joining me now is the co-author of that article, Joe Bartosh, journalist and author. Hi, Joe. Thanks for joining me on Free Speech Nation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So I think a lot of people are going to be reasonably familiar with the recent developments surrounding Stonewall and the extent of their influence, which perhaps wasn't previously appreciated. In this article, of course, you're talking about their influence even in government. But could you maybe talk to us a bit about why is it a problem when you have a charity like Stonewall having this kind of influence? I mean, aren't they just surely standing up for minority rights?
I think Stonewall are really trading on their reputation from many years ago when they were relevant and when they had a significant role in furthering the rights of lesbian, gay and bisexual people. Obviously, we achieved legal parity in 2013 with the passing of same-sex marriage, and then Stonewall accepted a grant to integrate those who identify as trans into their work. And now what we've seen is they're pushing some really quite bonkers beliefs. Stonewall genuinely believe that some lesbians can have penises, that some gay men can have vulvas. These are the sorts of things they are pushing and they are trying to make mainstream. Now, obviously, that depends upon the idea of having a gender identity, which they argue can be at odds with one's sexed body. And what they are pushing to do, and I think it's very interesting that you've chosen to frame this as about transgender rights. Trans people, those who identify as trans, have the same rights as everybody else. What this is actually about is a concerted effort to erase the category of biological sex in legislation and in society. That is what they are pushing to do. So that is why we are seeing hospital wards where men who are some of whom have committed violent sexual crimes, but they identify as women because that's their gender identity, and they are being put into women-only hospital wards. There's a really serious problem with this, and I think within government, it's quite clear that Stonewall have had a huge effect on the way that this debate is framed. I mean, our Prime Minister wasn't able to say that only women have a cervix. And similarly, none of the opposition party leaders willing to say that only women have a cervix. That's a basic biological fact that is verboten because Stonewall says it's offensive.
So this is really all about the notion of gender identity ideology. So you're not talking here, this isn't really about people who suffer from gender dysphoria. You know, they feel for whatever reason completely uncomfortable in their body. They feel they need to present or transition or undertake surgery or various other procedures in order to be happy in life. And that, you know, I mean, I would say surely most people would support anyone's right to do that. You're talking about people who identify. It's all about just identifying as something else and not making those changes. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So what Stonewall want is for changing your legal sex, your gender, because they conflate the two, whereas actually I think there's an argument for saying they are very separate things. Stonewall say that how you identify should determine what toilets you use, what prison you might end up going to if you're convicted of a crime, what hospital ward you go to. They believe that this should all be a matter of self-identification, which obviously has an impact on women's rights because, you know, when you have 1 in 5 women have been sexually assaulted at some point, it's quite important to have space away from men. That's not prudishness, that's just safety. And that's what Stonewall are pushing to get rid of.
So what do you say
and when
to
it
critics?
comes to
Sorry, Joe. What do you say to critics though who will say that argument is promoting the idea that trans people are inherently dangerous or predatory?
Oh, not at all. It's saying that men are inherently dangerous and predatory, and that's obviously not a popular thing to say, but it's the truth when you look at crime statistics, and that doesn't change just because you call yourself Shirley, change your pronouns, or put on a pair of frilly pants. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Biological sex is biological sex, and whether the violent behaviour of men is nature or whether it's nurture, it doesn't change when somebody decides to identify as the opposite sex, and that's a problem.
But you would concede that it is a minority of men who engage in that kind of behaviour. But I suppose what you're saying is, in terms of safeguarding, you concentrate on what the minority would do, not how the majority would behave. Is that the point?
Yeah, I mean that's why single-sex services exist. They exist because a minority of men pose a problem, and that's not to be disparaging about men. That's just a statistical fact. Men, 98% of sexual violence is committed by men.
In terms of Stonewall, how have we reached the point then that effectively the taxpayer is paying for a lobbying group? And how is it possible that we've reached the point where a lobbying group can have this much power over public policy?
Yeah, I mean it's quite startling. So I think it's been about just huge, the money that's poured into Stonewall, and a lot of it's been through the Diversity Champion Scheme, which essentially is a scheme that allows Stonewall to vet an organisation's internal policies to see that they are sort of inclusive in the way that Stonewall categorise inclusivity, and that has then. That then sort of they also score companies for things like whether they have LGBT networks, and of course that's not actually about supporting their staff or their employees who identify or who are lesbian, gay, and bisexual. It's actually about this very narrow ideology, and that I mean we've seen it. Obviously, what's happened to Professor Stock recently, that can have really serious ramifications. So there's a barrister called Akira Reindorf. She investigated what was happening at the University of Essex, and she found that Stonewall had been misrepresenting the law, and that they were having a chilling effect on freedom, academic freedom of speech, freedom of expression. So they are, I mean, you have a CEO at Stonewall who says that people who hold the perfectly ordinary belief, gender-critical beliefs, so that is that there are two sexes, that you cannot change sex, and that sex matters. Those are gender-critical beliefs. So I would argue that 99% of people would not see a problem with those those beliefs. Nancy Kelly, the CEO of Stonewall, has compared those beliefs to anti-Semitism. So when you have such a kind of a really extreme ideology, and when you have them vetting the policies of organisations, of statutory bodies, of they claim to have over 900 members of the Diversity Champion Scheme, and when you have organisations having their policies vetted by this really extreme ideological organisation, it's no surprise that we're seeing an impact on freedom of speech.
So this genuinely worries me insofar as, surely, I mean, transphobia does exist in that there are people who do hate other people because of the way they dress, the way they look, this kind of thing. And is it not possible to stand up against that kind of behaviour and to stand up for equality for all, but at the same time stand up for the idea of women's only spaces or the acknowledgement that biological sex is a reality? Why are those things considered to be incompatible? Why is it being framed in this way?
Well, I think Stonewall have suddenly found themselves on the back foot, and they've been very used to everything going in their way on their way for quite a long time. So they are now basically accusing the media of transphobia and saying there's a campaign against them. Whereas in reality, I think people are asking very valid questions that should have been asked right from the start. So I think sort of challenging the idea that, for example, a man who identifies as a woman should be allowed into women's changing rooms. I think it's fair enough to challenge that. I don't think that's transphobic. I think that's just logical, and that's not cruel. That's not unfair. That's just an opinion. And I think Stonewall have suppressed the debate and have had it all their way for such a long time that even the slightest challenge, they're now, I mean, they've blocked me on social media. I'm never objectionable. They block anyone who disagrees with them on social media. And I think in a way, they've almost got a sort of a mindset of social media in the way that they operate. They block those they disagree with. They're very polarised in the way that they present arguments. And I think they're, in a way, their approach is very much influenced by that sort of with us or against us, social media fueled anxiety almost.
Do you see a time when there will be a possibility to sit down with representatives of Stonewall, with gender-critical feminists, everyone get around a table and sort of sort this out? Because at the moment, it just doesn't look that way to me.
No, I don't think there will be. I think, to be honest, it doesn't matter what people think, so long as we don't change legislation to enshrine something that is essentially an ideology. So with, for example, the current consultation that's open on banning conversion therapy, that's something that Stonewall have been pushing for a long time. Now, of course, you'd have to be a bloody monster to think that conversion therapy was in any way either effective or a good idea. It is clearly not. But when it comes to gender identity, if you ban questioning why somebody feels uncomfortable in their body, you could effectively criminalize people, criminalize decent therapists doing their best to help people on the basis of an ideology. And that is really concerning. And yet the government, rather than having a 12-week consultation period, as is normal, have truncated it to 6. And that is blatantly because of Stonewall. And that's clearly an attempt to have a good news story in time for next year's LGBT Free to Be Meat conference, which the UK are backing, which the UK government are backing. So I think yes, we can absolutely have conversations. That would be great. But at the moment, we're fighting to stop something which is essentially a belief system from being enshrined in legislation.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Jo Bartos. Really appreciate it. Coming up on Free Speech Nation, I have an exclusive clip from my podcast with James Lindsay, who is leading a fight back against what he sees as an authoritarian movement that operates under the banner of social justice. See you in a minute.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. On my upcoming podcast episode, I'm joined by James Lindsay. James is the founder of the website New Discourses, which by its own admission is particularly concerned with the movement sometimes called critical social justice, which seeks to refashion society according to its own ideological values.
In 2017 and 18, Helen Pluckrose and Peter Boghossian and I, we'd been taking a look at the gender studies literature and the other literature in fields that we might call theoretical humanities, which are more or less humanities disciplines butting up against the social sciences, pretending, I'd say, to be social sciences with none of the academic rigor. And we saw a problem there. We suspected that there was a corruption actually in how they produce scholarship, and so that they were not producing legitimate scholarship. We thought, well, better way to both expose this and test this than to write a bunch of fake articles. And in fact, we tried to write as many as we could in a year. We succeeded in writing 20, which is rather a lot of academic articles. And so we submitted them to the highest ranking academic journals that we could, high ranking feminist philosophy journals, feminist geography, believe it or not, that exists, feminist social work, that also exists. And so we submitted these to these journals and tried to see what would happen. And so basically what we did was we started with these kind of preposterous conclusions and worked our way to them and worked in as much either silliness or absurdity or even kind of heinous or vile kind of stuff. So we had a paper about, dog sex that concluded with that we should train men the way that we train dogs to prevent rape culture. That when we started again, like I said, we started with the conclusion and worked our way there. And then secondly, we had these kind of vile papers. We had a paper about education where we said we should chain students, white and male students, by identity factors. We should chain students down to teach them a lesson about privilege. And that, they were very warm and receptive to that. We had another paper that we rewrote a chapter of Hitler's Mein Kampf and removed Hitler's Our Movement, meaning the Nazi Party, the rise of the Nazi Party, and replaced it with intersectional feminism, but retain the mood, retain the language to the greatest degree possible, given that it can't get caught as plagiarism if they checked. And so, all three of those that I just mentioned were accepted for publication. And so, in fact, 7 of our 20 papers were accepted for publication. 7 further were still under peer review. Probably 4 or 5 of those would have had a serious shot at getting accepted. And I think what we ended up showing, in fact, is that peer review in these disciplines works the way it's intended. But the problem is that the peers are corrupt, because at the beginning, we wrote 6 papers that just were absolute garbage. They were total hoaxes. We didn't engage with the literature. We didn't do any due diligence. We just wrote nonsense with non sequiturs and every other thing. And we actually got called out by a reviewer who saw it for what it was. He says, "You didn't engage with the literature. I don't think you even read some of these papers you've cited. This doesn't make any sense. This isn't really what this discipline is about." Very correct criticism. And so we figured out that we couldn't just write total nonsense and trick them with it. We had to write things that engaged with their literature and kind of flattered their biases, flattered their politics, flattered the idea that their scholarship is good and important and useful. And so once we switched to this model where we were doing that, we had tremendous success. And so I think what we ended up showing is that peer review is working in these disciplines, gender studies, et cetera. But the problem is that the reviewers themselves have a distorted view of what constitutes scholarship. Now, of course, the danger there is that what we see as academic scholarship is considered, the highest level of knowledge. It's not like a religious scripture, which we can kind of compartmentalize and say, okay, that's a religion. We understand that where it's coming from. It's not, something silly. It's not just, a magazine where somebody could write literally any opinion piece or whatever. This is supposed to be the kind of thing that gets trotted out in Parliament or Congress or something like that and is used to base public policy. This is the highest level stuff. This is how we organize academia and what's going to be taught to students to become the future leaders. This is how, people in the media are going to kind of skim by and say, oh, well, there's a study that says yada, 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 and support whatever other message that they're trying to say. And so if that's corrupted, we've got a big problem. And I think that we were very successful in exposing that. Like I said, 7 papers accepted, 4 actually published. The dog sex one won an award for excellence in scholarship, despite being preposterous. I think we showed that there's a real problem at the heart of academia with that project.
And yet, it does strike me that a lot of people within academia were very angry with you for doing this, for exposing this. Surely they should have seen you as doing them a favour, because if the system isn't working and if people are simply accepting papers on the basis of the extent to which they satisfy their own preconceived ideas, then surely that should be exposed and they would welcome that, wouldn't they? Unless they are in fact frauds.
Right. Anybody who's actually a scholar should have welcomed it. Anybody who is a fraud would probably be expected to be upset. And so that provides a bit of a litmus test. But what we actually saw was something very interesting. Of course, you would expect that the gender studies and feminist scholars and critical race theorists would be very upset, and you would expect that. So that's priced in. Nobody has to think twice about that. But what we actually saw also, sociologists became very mad at us because of the way this butts up against social science, where the sociologists shouldn't be mad at us. They should be mad at the people who are corrupting the reputation of their discipline through their shoddy pretend sociology. But we also saw people more broadly in academia who were upset that we insulted academia overall, or that we made peer review look less than perfect, where, of course, that's what they base their careers and I guess maybe their sense of identity, and feeling good about themselves. Their self-esteem is rooted in believing that they're doing this high and mighty thing. And, we showed that it's actually corruptible. And these people, rather than being upset at the people corrupting it, became mad at the people who exposed it.
Yes. I want to talk to you a little bit about how we got into this position where we have this kind of, as you put it, a religion, which is kind of dominating the universities. Of course, you wrote a book with Helen Pluckrose called Cynical Theories, how universities made everything about race, gender and identity, and why this harms everybody, which I think is a fantastic book. And I want to talk to you a bit about that. And perhaps you could just talk through your general view of how we have reached the point where a university, which is meant to be about the production of truth and knowledge and free inquiry, in fact is about replicating these pre-existing ideas. I know it's a big question, but perhaps if you could just talk us through a rough overview of how that happened.
So now we enter into a brief summary of the last century of Western philosophy.
Yeah, just do that for me, Jim. That's, shouldn't be too difficult.
No, I mean, there was actually a concerted push. I've been recently reading a book that's relevant to education that's called The Critical Turn in Education by Isaac Gottesman. I think he's at Iowa, but I'd have to double check, Iowa University or University of Iowa, whatever it is. But he's an education scholar in this kind of critical tradition, as it were. And he's actually written this book to summarize how education went from whatever it was before the 1960s to what it is today. And that would include both higher ed and K through 12 here in the States, primary, secondary, I guess, more broadly. And he actually says at the beginning, he said, where did all the 60s radicals go? This is the first sentence of his book. Where did all the 60s radicals go? So they didn't go to yuppiedom. They didn't go there here. They didn't go there. They went to the classroom. And so there has actually been a concerted push to following the radicalism of the 1960s, which was often violent and in the streets, much like we've experienced over the last 2 years here in the States, especially. And it wasn't very popular. And so a lot of these activists actually did become they sought to become professors. The goal became to radicalize a base of students. They actually call it the student movement. This was a new agenda coming out of the 1960s. And so the best way to do that, of course, was to take these 60s radicals and have them become professors. And so there's this creeping pressure to bring this kind of, self-referential scholarship and very agenda-driven, politically agenda-driven scholarship into the universities from late 1960s going forward, but especially early 1970s going forward. And what they found is that academics, I think in general, are particularly poorly disposed to push back against it. I think their academics in general tend to be I don't want to say too open-minded because it's not correct. What it is that they're too willing to consider an idea just as an idea when there actually may be more to it. For example, implementation or radical politics baked into the idea. They're too willing to spend virtually an infinite amount of time debating about words and what words mean, rather than realizing that the intentionally double-meaninged terms are being implemented in ways while they're arguing about the meaning of words and whether the ideas are good or bad. Another trait, and I hate to put it this way because it's a tragedy that we have to say this, but that academics tend to be too charitable to ideas. They say, oh, it must be the absolute best meaning that one could take out of these ideas must be the one that we should be focusing on, where in fact it could actually be the worst one that's intended.
You can listen to my whole conversation with James Lindsay on my podcast, which is called Free Speech Nation, the podcast. I'm imaginative like that. That goes live right at the end of this show, and that is at 9 p.m. if you're a new viewer. It is now 8 o'clock. You're watching Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Thank you to my lovely audience. Now, on Free Speech Nation, I'm always very keen to keep you up to date with the most important news of the week, the key issues that matter the most. And I came across this headline in the Daily Mail, which I think takes some beating. Spanish bishop, 52, who quit the clergy to be with erotic fiction writing sexologist lover, 38, is accused of being possessed as he finds new job exporting pig semen. I have never seen a headline like that. That is absolutely astonishing, and I think they only covered this story basically because they wanted to write that headline. I mean, surely. Nick, have you any thoughts on this?
On pig semen? Yes.
Yeah, or this story in particular. Do you want to talk us through what's happened
I'm the expert.
What has happened in this story?
Well, basically, the bishop quit because he wanted to go out with a younger sex writer. Well, she writes erotic books about demons and stuff, doesn't she?
OK, so a demonologist stroke erotic sex fiction.
And then they said maybe he's been possessed. And the obvious secular thing he'd say is, oh, of course he hasn't been possessed. But I think he might have been possessed, because I believe in the devil.
I know you do.
Not literally, I don't believe, like, I'm not pro him when I say I believe him. I'm strongly anti him.
It sounds like I believe in the devil.
No, not in that sense, but not that he can do better. No, but here's the thing about all this Satanism. So she writes these books that are said to invert morality, which is sort of the very definition of Satanism. Now, when you talk about Satanism, you sound a bit silly. But the elites get up to some weird stuff, don't they? Like, think about Bohemian Grove, right? That's where they go and worship an owl god with all, like, ex-presidents and powerful people.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
You don't know about Bohemian... Do you guys know about it?
Yeah. Sorry, I think, Nick, you've been spending way too much time on InfoWars.
Is this going to be another lawnmower man?
No one knows what you're talking about. The world leaders are not part of a conspiracy to worship owls.
I'm not all documented.
It's not
documented. John Ronson wrote a book about it called Them. He's a respected... Hayden's nodding.
He is quite respected.
True, Bohemian Grove's a thing.
No, my point is...
You're saying it as well. You're both insane.
No, the point is, now Alex Jones will say they're sacrificing children to an owl god. John Ronson will say it's just a silly ritual. But the question is, it's still a bit weird. If you said to me, what have you been up to this weekend, Nick? And I said, I've been worshipping an owl god with some powerful people. Your first question wouldn't be, but did you really mean it? Do you know what I mean?
I'm going to go to Hayden on this.
Yeah, but you better have...
because Hayden is a serious, respected activist from the left. Can you please tell me whether what Nick says has any validity whatsoever?
Yeah, I think there's probably an Illuminati. They just don't call themselves the Illuminati.
Oh, for goodness sake. I wanted serious...
What are they called?
No, I'm going to put a stop to this. I'm sorry. I wanted serious conversations about bishops who are selling pig semen. I did not want this stuff about owl worship. This is ridiculous. I think it's quite a career move, though, isn't it, as a bishop? And I think, Satanism aside, I think I don't know how you get from one to the other. It's just such a sort of
from being a bishop to selling pig semen.
Well, like you had a similar thing, not similar, but I mean you were a child star, but you.
Yes.
Now, Hayden, you may not know.
I sold pig semen.
No, Hayden was in a film called The Secret Garden with Maggie Smith, and he played. You won't recognise him because he was a small, what they call child at the time. Yeah. And now you're not a child, and you've gone into activism and comedy.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that? Did you want to be an actor? Did that sort of?
No, that's why I'm into activism and comedy.
Oh, I just assumed
it was awful being an actor.
Being a child star.
Yeah, you're just sort of talking mouthpiece, talking monkey. Get told what to say.
Really?
Get wheeled on, literally in a wheelchair in my case, because I was playing Colin the can't say cripple, but he's called Colin the cripple, and he was wheeled on and he couldn't walk.
Is that what he's called in the film?
In the film, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then it's okay.
Yeah, then it's okay. Yeah. And I'm him, so.
And you are him, so you're allowed to talk.
I am he.
Yes. I just find it very interesting.
Did you drink too much on a plane? Is that a callback?
No.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work, Nick. Let's go back to the audience, though. I'd like to hear what the audience have to say, not necessarily about the bishop. Let's move on from the Spanish bit, because that actually made me feel a bit ill. So let's go to Mick. Mick, you have a question about something.
Yeah, another serious question.
Go on.
At what age should you stop spanking your bum flirtatiously?
We need a better audience. This is ridiculous. I want this to be a serious, rigorous...
You say your own bum?
No, wait, I think I know what he's talking about. Right, so Mick is talking about Sir Rod Stewart's performance on the Graham Norton show the other day. So basically, he was dancing, Lady Gaga was there watching, looking horrified. Do we? OK, we have the package. Can we have a look at it? Let's have a look. I didn't see any spanking there. I don't see what the issue is, but apparently he was spanking at some point during that clip. We just didn't have the
That was just quality
footage.
content.
That was just fine. maybe the image of him spanking was too sort of provocative for us to play. Maybe that's why they didn't
come
play
back after 11 p.m.
Do you think that there's something... People are quite mean, I think, about older acts, particularly older pop stars and rock stars. It's this idea that they shouldn't be out on tour, they shouldn't be like people like the Rolling Stones. Why shouldn't they? I think it's actually a genuine form of ageism. It is ageism, right?
Yeah. Blues singers used to start at about 70, didn't they?
They did. They did. And that was considered... They had gravitas then.
Yeah,
they had
Frank Sinatra hit his prime at about 55, didn't he?
You're right.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no reason why Rod Stewart... He looked really good to me. But
did he?
Yeah, I thought he looked fantastic. But there we go. That's just me, maybe. OK, we got a question from Julie. Where's Julie?
Yeah.
Hello, Julie.
Hello. Should supermarkets be allowed to turn customers away for what they're wearing?
OK, so now, this happened this week. This video went viral. I'm sure probably some of you saw this. So this is in Asda, and this is in a supermarket, and a young woman's in the supermarket, and somebody who works there actually tells her that she's too scantily clad and asks her to leave, which is bizarre. Let's have a look at this clip now.
And you're saying that what I'm wearing is
No, because you are working without almost clothes. We can see your body almost.
I'm wearing what?
Yeah, no problem. Right now, manager is coming, manager of store, 9 shift.
This is what I'm wearing, by the way.
Where is IFAS, Amra?
So I don't respect myself, is what you said.
Huh?
I don't respect myself.
No, not because we are respect, but we have policy in Asda.
For one thing, I don't think you can be underdressed in Asda, right? But also, like, that's a perfectly legitimate... That's in no way provocative at all. I mean, you know, I wear much more provocative things than that. What do you think, Hayden?
She clearly didn't get the memo that Sharia Fashion Week was taking place on R4 at Asda next to the biscuits.
Do you think it was a religious thing?
I think so. Felt like that, maybe.
I mean, well, I don't know what the religion, whether the person was religious or just very prudish. I mean, it's difficult to know. Go on.
That's why Mum's gone to Iceland.
Yeah. That's good gag. It got nothing, but it was a good gag. It deserved more. And it's
there you go.
I know that's pity, but it's like, go on, Nick.
But I was just going to say, apparently she went to Lidl afterwards and got kicked out for being overdressed. That's what I am I right?
See, now it's just become a battle of the comedians now. So I mean,
we love Lidl, really. I don't know. We're allowed to endorse brands. We're neutral.
Of course we are.
We're neutral on all of them.
I think Lidl. But that wasn't Lidl. That was Asda.
That was Asda, but she went to Lidl after in my story. But anyway, the point is, well, you're saying it was religious. I thought that guy wasn't he like Eastern European or something?
They can have religion.
No, but he implied it was like a Sharia thing. I think what it is it's an Eastern European guy where they still have morals and they're still Christian.
Oh, for goodness sake.
No, this is hard-working Christians. He's come here and he's just like, no, get out. You know, he's seen the West. And
I had no idea you were this reactionary. Honestly, I had no idea at all.
What do you think about what she was wearing? Do you think it was
it was pretty moderate. It wasn't even that bad, was it? That's why.
That bad? She's allowed to wear whatever she wants.
No, but if you hear a story, that's not what I meant. If you hear a story where someone like got kicked out for what they wore, you'd imagine something ridiculous, wouldn't you? And then you watch it and you go, oh, she's just in gym clothes.
No, this is true. I get your point. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, she can wear whatever she wants. Like, it's got nothing to do.
You've been very clear with that. You're trying to stitch me up as some
I'm just
conservative.
No,
where's the line, Andrew? Should she be able to be naked in Asda?
Yes.
No,
you're saying yes.
Right. Look, I wasn't advocating public nudity. All I was saying is that people
you were coming very close.
We live in a liberal society where we should be able to wear whatever we want. But I'm saying, and I'm actually taking your side here in a way, insofar as looking at what she was wearing, though, I don't even see, even if I were a religious fundamentalist like you, I wouldn't necessarily see that as being a problem. I wouldn't.
I'm just saying there are different cultures clashing there, and he's right. That's all I'm saying.
He's right. Okay, I just can't believe it. Anyway, I think we'd better move on from that. This is Tony. A question from Tony. Hello, Tony.
Hello there. Were people outside the LSE this week protesting against the Israeli ambassador exercising free speech, or were they just anti-Semitic?
OK, so this is a very interesting question. Now, did all of you see this? So this video went viral, and there was these protests outside the London School of Economics, and it was the Israeli ambassador. And it was, I mean, I have to say, I mean, I understand that protests can be quite belligerent, but it seemed quite intimidating. We have the video, so let's have a look at the video now. You can see for yourself.
Aren't you ashamed? Aren't you ashamed?
Difficult, isn't it? Because I'm all for peaceful protest, but there's a line, isn't there? Because that feels intimidatory. It feels targeted. It feels aggressive. I like the fact they had to bundle her into the car. I couldn't possibly. I don't know. I'll come over to my panel here, but I mean, I never like to assume people's motives. I don't like to say that I can say for certain that in those people's minds they were anti-Semitic or whatever. But irrespective of motive, that makes me very uncomfortable. That kind of thing. What do you think, Hayden?
Well, yeah, I don't know. You couldn't really see much of the protest, and yeah, obviously I agree. People don't need to be intimidated when they're, you need to have an open, honest debate.
Yeah.
But the, Israeli annexation of Gaza is pretty awful. was saying earlier, I'm from Hackney, so I can only really understand Israel's policy in Gaza as a sort of militarised gentrification. But that does seem to be what's happening at the barrel of a gun.
Well, so I understand the strength of feeling around the issues. I mean, I completely get that. And
people are obviously upset.
I get that with a lot of protests, even protests I don't agree with, and I can see why people have sincere beliefs, and these can sometimes come out in the form of anger. But even an expression of anger, I think, can be done in such a way that another human being is not intimidated by that or threatened by that. But by the same token, I am torn because I do believe in free speech and I do believe in the right to protest. Nick, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, it looked very unpleasant, and there has been a lot of anti-Semitism, and it did look nasty. In general, I stay out of the Israel-Palestine thing completely because it's very far away. I don't fully understand it. It's not something I tend to stick to things I feel passionately about and understand, like being anti-lockdown or my belief that I should have my own TV show, things like that. Do you know what I mean? Like fundamental things I'm passionate about. So I tend to. I think Hayden's taken a very strong stance. I don't do that.
Well, I think
that did look a bit nasty.
I think you're very. Hayden has taken a strong stance. I think you are right. I always like to stay out of things I know absolutely nothing about. I think that's fair enough. But I think we can, though, make a judgment, or at least we can talk about the nature in which protests are conducted, irrespective of what the protest is about, can't we? I mean, I would have thought
the nature in which they're conducted.
I think there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it without.
What is the way to do protest?
It's a massive question.
Maybe the government should issue sort of guidelines for how one should protest.
No. Look, as I've said before, I think you can be noisy, you can be disruptive.
Noisy is okay. Disruptive is okay.
Violence.
Booing?
No, violence.
I didn't see any violence there, to be fair.
But we do have laws against harassment.
What about intimidation? Where's your line here?
How do you define intimidation? If I went
like
boo
when you're on a
at your
show with
next
me
joke.
and you're like worried about how I live up to him.
Now we're getting to deep philosophical questions which we could go on forever with. So I don't think we're really qualified to do it.
Right.
But let's move on to a question from Fur.
Oh, shuts us down.
Hello, Fur. Have I pronounced that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. Hello.
I have a question. So, is Prince Harry psychic?
Is Prince Harry psychic?
Yes.
Yes. Well, and he claims to be, and I'm not making that up. He does. So Prince Harry this week claimed that he had warned Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, about the Capitol riots and that people were going to use the platform for this coup and to incite violence. So he was speaking to Wired, which I think is a media outlet. Let's have a look anyway.
Jack and I were emailing each other prior to January the 6th, where I warned him that his platform was allowing a coup to be staged. That email was sent the day before, and then it happened, and I haven't heard from him since.
Of course he's on first-name terms with Jack Dorsey. It's so perfect, isn't it? Honestly, he thinks he's Mother Shipton.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
He's not the brightest spark, is he?
No, I mean, did he predict anything?
No, I don't think so. I think his genome's got more inbuilt obsolescence than an iPhone.
It's too clever.
Wow.
It's way too clever.
I didn't get that.
I know. It's so clever that Nick is actually
It's because they're very inbred, the royal family, so it's got the inbuilt obsolescence.
Oh, I get it.
He's not very smart.
Right, OK. Go on.
Do your apology, Andrew. It's amazing that he predicted it, but why didn't he stop it? That's what I want to know. He's such an absolute ledge. He could have just stopped it. Yeah. And the other funny thing about the story is that he says he was telling Jack Dorsey, then after he told him that and after it happened on Jan 6th, Jack just didn't get back to him. Jack Dorsey ghosted him is what he's basically said. The whole story is amazing. He went on to say that Mexit is a misogynist term, and he said that all the hate speech against Meghan comes down to about 50 accounts on Twitter, all run by me, but that's separate. Don't worry about that. There's some interesting thoughts from Harry. But yeah, he said he predicted it, basically. What he really means is he said that in general Twitter's dangerous.
Yeah, but I think this is my worry about that. I mean, what he's talking about is a general level of toxicity on Twitter that you could use to say that something bad might happen.
Yeah.
If that's the case, you could make that prediction every day because Twitter is a cesspit. And so obviously you're going to be right every now and then because it's going to. It wasn't anything to do with Twitter, was it?
For me, it's more. It's quite telling in the fact that he is, the sort of the obsession that we have with this Capitol Hill riot, right?
The fact that you've done those scare quotes suggests to me that you're not entirely convinced.
I'm not entirely convinced. And the kind of column inches that it's taken up during a period where Matt Taibbi wrote a great piece that I think just this morning it's come out, you should check it out online, about the column inches that Capitol Hill riot has taken up versus the fact that the wealth, the cumulative wealth of billionaires during this lockdown has risen 70%.
Right.
Some 2 trillion.
Okay,
and people like Prince Harry, who are some of the most privileged people in the world, are going after some of the least privileged people in the world. Who you might not like their politics, but they're upset, they're angry, they're
yeah, but
you know.
Hayden, we come back to the limits of protest. Would you accept that breaking in to the Capitol is that's not just peaceful protest? That goes into balance.
No, I think obviously it's not peaceful protest, and they did break into the Capitol Hill building, and I don't even like their politics. But there's an obsession. There's a sort of divide and conquer thing going on, I think, among people like Harry, who are some of the most privileged people in the world, who are willing to pit the people who are suffering most in society against each other, and it's the prism of things like the Capitol Hill riots that happens.
I mean, it is interesting the way
he makes enemies of people.
The way people talked about it, it was like it was this apocalyptic thing, and I understand that people were hurt and someone died, but then you also saw like just some people in horns and a furry cape, and you thought this isn't the big insurrection that everyone thinks it is it?
So that's what I was going to say. I agree with Hayden. It's overstated. It's basically 12 blokes in silly hats, is what it was. But like you say, someone did die, but that was someone who was shot by a police officer.
Right.
So that's arguably makes the same point. But yeah, I agree. It's been overstated.
Your enemy is Jeff Bezos, not the guy with horns on his head, dressed in a funny outfit, invading.
Okay. Well,
I agree. Am I left?
Yeah, you're actually agreeing now. This is not what you're meant to be.
You're the real left.
You're meant to be the reactionary conservative. No, you're meant to be the lefty who's out of
I'm
control.
the real left.
Anyway, can kids be racist? Now, I'm going to be putting that question to Adrian Hart, a researcher who has been looking into reports of racism from children as young as 5 at Brighton schools. Join us after the break.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
A Freedom of Information request submitted by the Mail on Sunday revealed that school children making innocent-sounding remarks about their friends will be logged as racist incidents if they are related to ethnicity. Now, pupils as young as 5 years old making racist-sounding comments on their classmates will have the incidents recorded on their files, which will then be transferred when they move to secondary school. So to discuss this, I'm joined by author, youth worker and filmmaker Adrian Hart, who recently contributed to a film called Only Human, which has been featured on the Don't Divide Us website for Black History Month. Adrian Hart, everybody. Adrian, thank you very much for joining us. Now, this is a report that's been commissioned by the Mail on Sunday. You were involved with the Brighton element of this report, is that right, of collecting information?
Yeah, I initiated the survey in the first place. And
what can a child be racist?
No. I mean, I think that the whole mistake there is the idea that children are somehow kind of miscreant mini adults.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, there are children being racist in adult terms that are like 5 and 6. They don't know.
Yeah, they don't understand what they're saying.
So, yes, I mean, maybe at a later stage through the school system, at late secondary school, there might be a few cases where you could make a case.
Yes.
But the point about children is that they are in development. They're going through stage by stage. And of course, if they pick up on the fact that there are some verboten words, there's some forbidden phrases and words, they're going to say them.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's for them to just... They have the right to be children. Children behave childishly. Adults, yes, firm authority, trust teachers.
Yes.
To intervene how and when they think they should and age appropriate. And then they might say, cut it out.
Well, this is what surprised me, because when I was a teacher, and it's a number of years ago now, but, you know, we would never write a child off in this way. I mean, because there is this sinister implication to this, where they record it on your file, or something you've done when you were 5, and that gets carried over to secondary school. I mean, that seems insane to me, frankly.
It was years ago, because I've been doing this for a long time. So I think it was the 2011 survey I did, and I talked to some schools, and they actually did say, I was surprised, they did say, oh no, in some cases we will pass the file on from primary to secondary or secondary to college if we think we ought to. It wasn't a kind of automatic thing.
Yeah, okay.
But they said it, several schools said it, and everywhere else you get like, no, we don't do that. But
so I suppose you could say that if a young child, even 5 years old or something like that, is using appalling racialised terminology, you could say, well, they've obviously picked that up from somewhere, there might be concerns within the family, that kind of thing. Some of these quotations, though, that I'm reading in the Mail on Sunday are clearly children being children. I mean, there's one where a boy makes some sort of joke, an attempted joke about Turkey because the person's from Turkey, and makes a joke about the bird, about being you know. And I would say that's that's not, you know, a serious racist incident, is it?
No, it is absolutely not. It's just another incident of children behaving childishly. This used to be understood really well. I mean, when you were a teacher,
everyone knew this.
Yeah,
yeah,
and head teachers had actually, you know, were well versed in child development kind of knowledge. Yeah, they knew that kids needed that experience. They used to call it unfettered peer interaction. You know, in order to kind of discover the consequences of their kindness or their cruelty.
Yes.
If you consistently just mean, you're going to have no mates. You know?
Yeah, that's right.
And they go through the various stages. Now that doesn't mean that that schools back then and since ignore targeted and sustained bullying of any kind.
Sure.
And they have a good record. You know, I just think that what we've seen since I've been looking at this for over 10 years is the slow erosion of trust in professional skills of teachers.
So is this connected to the rise of the critical social justice movement, insofar as there is this belief within that movement, that ideology, that effectively people are tainted from birth, that racism is everywhere, it permeates every aspect of society, it's inescapable, that white people will always be oppressors and people of colour will always be oppressed, and it feels like this is tying into this a little bit.
Yeah, it absolutely, it's become supercharged since June 2020, right? But I was watching it develop. It's almost like the post-McPherson era. The Stephen Lawrence inquiry kind of led to Race Relations Amendment Act, and you know, a racist incident is any incident perceived to be racist. And then that kind of like has, looking back at it, they've sort of like laid a kind of runway for what happened with the whole June 2020 thing, when critical race theories suddenly sort of came of age.
Yes.
And in Brighton and Hove, I just think that is particularly evident. You know, this is why it worries me a lot, because it's not like I'm seeing thousands of racist incidents coming from the schools particularly. I'm just really worried that that is what we will see, because they're training teachers to attenuate their, you know, to turn up their radars and spot those things that they just call, the council call kind of the...
like microaggressions.
Yeah, they're like microaggressions. They just talk about the sort of understated, you know, little hints. You know.
Well, let's be clear about this. You're not saying that teachers shouldn't be alert to signs of racism from young people.
I would say, yeah, I'm kind of saying that. I'm not calling it, I wouldn't call it racism. I just basically think that when kids, it's like teachers always did that. If kids just say stupid stuff, they just kind of like say, hang on.
Well, okay, well, let me give you a specific example. So when I was a teacher, there was a boy, and he was a teenager, so he was a bit older, and he'd drawn a very overtly anti-gay cartoon. And we didn't just write him off and say, well, that's it, he's a homophobe forevermore and he's an evil person. You know, we had conversations with him and to try and work out his thought process there and to explain to him why this wouldn't be appropriate. Because I do think children require socialisation. That's part of what being a teacher is. But then that means you can be an autonomous adult, right? But it never even considered or crossed anyone's mind to think this needs to be recorded on his file and he is going to be stigmatised with this forevermore. That was never even entertained.
But more ordinarily, you would just have these numbers, these units of racist or homophobic incidents just being put into an aggregate data set and sent to the town hall. And that was what was happening over 10 years ago. It kind of relaxed after 2010, but now I just think you're going to have local authorities that are that have like Brighton and Hove have ideologues, woke ideologues, really kind of wanting to kind of get teachers trained to ramp it up and just bring in more and more racist incidents that just, in a way, it's kind of a way for them to kind of say, yes, this is what critical race theory is saying. Racism is baked into the system. It'll be expressed in children. And it's systemic. And we were right all along. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Can you talk us through this? Because I think a lot of people are confused. Because critical race theory is a discipline from America. It was originated in the 1970s in legal scholarship. So what has this possibly got to do with education? Can you explain why that is in any way relevant?
I mean, the first thing is critical race theory in Britain has this UK formation around Professor David Gilmour. And there's even a department at Birmingham University that is kind of applying critical race theory into the educational setting. There's that. But actually, more than that, in the way it's been taken up by local authorities like in Brighton, then you'd have to say that they are applying a kind of dim-witted, sort of broad idea that racism is everywhere, it's systemic, and inevitably schools will have to change their curriculum, alter their reading lists, and really take racist incidents seriously, not just the ones that involve bullying, but the ones that involve, as you said, just these little kiddie microaggressions, and get those in. And that would just like substantiate the theories that they already hold, But you accept that it is possible for a system to be racist, institutionally racist? Well, I mean, I'm old enough to remember, how things were in the 70s and 80s. This was a sort of, racism was a social force. I lived in East London in the 80s, and it was nasty. It was visceral. So, and it was egged along by magistrates and police, and it was. And that's an example, surely, isn't it, of where the system is working against minority groups, and that needs to be resolved, and that needs to be addressed. And to a very large extent, it was. We live in an age now where it's not to say that kind of sort of individual prejudice is. I mean, that still exists, of course, but it doesn't have that official sanction. I see. And for me to say that, it just like goes completely against the critical race theory thing, because their version of the systemic and the structural is that it's simply hardwired into a system of white-dominated society. Because actually, thinking back, one of the things that teachers were all very good at is tackling these things, challenging these things when they arose. So the idea that teachers are perpetuating a racist system, it's not borne out experientially, I should say that. I've never come across anything remotely like that. No, and I think that the first thing that is done in the name of anti-racism, and I've seen this over the years, and it's about to be supercharged, I think, is to have teachers forget about their professional skills, forget about the specifics of a situation, and just think, hang on, I better write this up. I better just write it up as an incident. And what troubles me is that it's about to now go back to the way it used to be, but worse, where it all goes to the town hall, they collate it, make the data available, and then somebody comes along and says, look, there's a problem of racism in schools, we need to nip it in the bud, that kind of really vulgar notion of child development right there. It's at the tip of the iceberg, always the tip of the iceberg. These are just the racist kids of a racist population. I see. So do you fear that with the implementation of critical race theory, or a version of it in the UK, it could, in fact, make race relations worse rather than better? Oh, absolutely. I mean, can you think of anything worse than having children who, they're white, they're non-white, they're friends, and then they're receiving kind of an education that is actually suggesting that one group is an oppressor and the other group is a victim. So that right there, fundamentally, is divisive. It's really divisive, and I'm glad that we have groups like Don't Divide Us, who I support, that really push back against this. In Brighton, the trouble is they won't let us see the close-up and see the training that they're putting out. And really, luckily, we're going to crack that. But It's a 5-year plan, you know, and to roll out. And the first step is to get the heads and governors and equality leads on side so that they can then educate and pass that down to the staff.
Right, very interesting indeed. Well,
Yeah.
Adrian Hart, thank you very much for joining me today. Still to come on Free Speech Nation, I'll be giving my verdict on our audience's unfiltered dilemmas with the help of my lovely panel. See you in a minute.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So let's go straight back to our audience for some last questions. We've got a question from Mick. Who is Mick? Wait, no, there was a Mick. Okay, we don't have a Mick. Okay.
No, it's still a Mick.
Oh, is it you? Have you got another question?
I have got another question.
Oh, okay, great. Let's do it.
Should students be reporting their dons for microaggressions?
Okay, so this is an ongoing, but should students be reporting their dons for microaggression? This is Downing College now in Cambridge, and this is actually an ongoing thing, because I was talking to Nick about this before the show, because every now and then, every few months goes by, and then there's a report about a university that is introducing this microaggression thing. There was even, do you remember the Sheffield University one, where Sheffield University were paying their students to spy on other students, and it was something awful, like £7.52 an hour, and basically they were asking them to report any microaggressions. But because a microaggression is all about the interpretation, you could probably, I could probably say you're microaggressing me now.
So microaggression snitchers aren't even on a living wage. That's awful.
Exactly.
Scandal.
We actually need to campaign for that.
Yes.
We
need a union.
A living wage for microaggression snitchers.
Yeah, they do. Imagine taking that job though. I'm gonna snitch on my friends for anything that, even though they said something perfectly nice.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna pretend it was evil
for my £7.50.
For £7.52.
Yeah.
At least do it for a decent wage. Exactly.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts about microaggressions?
It's all so boring. I've got like woke fatigue, Andrew, because this story keeps coming back. And
It
I said to you
does.
before, because I covered this on the radio a few months ago, I'm like, what's the difference with this story? And you said, well, it's a different college. I'm
It
like,
is.
We've got to go through this all again for a new college. It's like, it was just as stupid when the other college did it.
Yeah, but do you know what? Okay, do you know why it's a problem? Because every now and then this sort of thing happens, right? And then no one does anything. And then it happens at another college. Everyone says, oh, that's silly. But no one does anything. So again and again it keeps happening. It's like with the statues being toppled.
You
know?
need to fix it.
Well, someone needs to fix it. Because no one actually stands up against it when it happens, you know? And it's like, it's going to keep happening. And someone has to, there has to be some kind of concerted pushback and say, actually, well, for a start, look, I get, like, let's take microaggressions, right? It is perfectly possible for me to inadvertently say something that I was being a bit thoughtless about, and I've caused some offence, and I probably shouldn't. And someone should say to me, actually, you know, that was why did you say that?
That's what the word sorry was for.
That's what it's
back
for.
in the day, yeah.
Sorry is a great word,
Yeah,
right? And I'm all
functional
for it.
sorry. It was working.
Exactly.
Wasn't it?
It was working really,
It was working
really well.
fine, sorry. Well, we had this with WikiLeaks, didn't we, where there was someone that wrote into WikiLeaks.
Can I explain? You have to explain what WikiLeaks is.
WikiLeaks was like WikiLeaks, but for sort of woke leaks, where people could... And people were writing from big corporations, and we had a guy from Northrop Grumman, which was a big arms company, I think the second or third largest arms company in the world, saying that the arms dealers were all being given microaggression training. So you can imagine them sitting around while they're selling ballistic missiles to some awful dictator somewhere, being like, so sorry, I overstepped the mark.
It's the macroaggressions that are really the problem.
I mean,
I forget the macro.
I'm a layman, but
I think funding arms giving arms to tyrants, that might be more.
It's a macro.
I think that's an issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's right. But then when it comes to university campuses, and particularly students, I think students are always going to be a bit gauche, aren't they? They're always going to be they're going to be drunk, and they're going to say the wrong thing, and then you sort it out the next day, don't you?
Yeah.
I used to do that. Just a quick
pistols at dawn.
Well, no, more like a fist fight in a car park. But I would sort it out. Not really. I mean, as if I could do that. Look at me. It's ridiculous. But I mean, you would sort it out through a conversation over brunch. That's what I do.
You just have to... Andrew just turned to me as if I ever eat brunch. You know what I mean? We didn't have brunch in the north, Andrew. We just had one meal a day, and we were lucky to have it.
And it was just cold.
Yeah, it was just a piece of lard. But anyway, what? I mean, this sounds like the obvious point, but why did Cambridge University have time for this kind of thing? It's meant to be a cutting edge. It's meant to be like one of the leading universities in the world.
Well, I'll tell you why. So the problem is that major institutions, and particularly the more elite, posh institutions, tend to get captured first. And when they do, they end up devoting all their time to this. This is actually...
A bit like Harry, they get captured by this nonsense.
They do. But like Prince Harry. Yeah. This is the singular point about whatever we want to call this, woke politics, woke ideology, critical social justice, leftist identitarianism, whatever we want to call this. When it captures an institution, that's all the institution cares about from then on. Right? That's the problem with it. So it captures Hollywood, and then that's all that filmmaker's going to care about.
It's like a parasite.
I didn't
like
say it.
Venom.
It is like Venom.
The movie Venom, which I like to reference on this show.
Nick has referenced Venom on a number of shows when he said, but no one's seen the film except Nick.
It's a parasite that gets in his body.
No one cares.
It's a great analogy.
No one cares, Nick.
You've seen Venom.
It's too obscure
it's not obscure. It's a mainstream Hollywood movie.
Okay,
you guys
anyway, let's get into too posh because we don't like Venom. I actually watched that because you recommended it, and I sat through it. It was actually quite good. Okay, let's go for another question. This is from who's this? Who's the next question from? I don't know. I don't have a name here, so I'm just going to say... Kirsty.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, yes. So I have a dilemma. So I spent Christmas alone due to the COVID restrictions last year, and I quite enjoyed it. So is it OK to sort of slightly lie to my family and tell them I'm suffering a bit from anxiety about mixing in order to be able to stay in London again this year and just go out with my friends for Christmas?
I mean, that is an interesting dilemma. I think Nick's got the answer.
Have you thought about just showing them a positive lateral flow test? Just photograph one. You can I'll send you one, and you can just use it. Not that I have it, but anyway, yeah, I had the exact same dilemma. It's like, oh, I can't go for the family meal this year. Oh, it's terrible. You know what I mean? I felt like you, because it is a bit of a hassle, isn't it, Christmas? At the same time, I think Christmas should definitely go ahead. I hate the idea of more restrictions. Let's all have a great Christmas. I'll just be alone. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I think you can actually fake... I mean, those kids, you know, those school kids that were faking lateral flow tests, because then if they found a positive, their whole class got time off.
Oh, really?
I mean, it was absolutely...
You could just actually catch it and then go and cough on your family. You'd never have this problem again.
Yeah, let's not encourage that, Hayden. Thank you very much. But no, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because actually, I think one thing about the pandemic and the lockdowns, a lot of people have realised they really like their own company, frankly. You know, I think a lot of us just want to be alone. I'm a misanthrope. I don't like hanging...
Yeah, I'm the same. We all are, obviously. That's why we're in this business.
Exactly. Okay.
You only hang out with people when you're on live TV, don't you?
That's exactly the only time I ever communicate with people. You say that. A friend of mine said to me, like, I only ever see you now talking to me when you're on a podcast. That's the only way you communicate with people these days. Terrible indictment of my own behaviour. Anyway, I would say, look, ultimately though, your family is important and your friends are important. This is the proper answer, isn't it?
This is the proper answer.
Don't
cough on your family if you've got COVID. That was a joke.
Yeah, don't do that. Do we have another question? Do we have Kirsty? Yeah. No. Do you have a second question, Kirsty? No, we've got someone from Cheryl. Is there not Cheryl?
Hello.
Hi, Cheryl. There you are. Hi.
Hello.
How are you? Hi.
Should teenage boys be taught about the menopause?
Should teenage boys be taught about the menopause? So this is in reference to Harrow School, which has announced a social media influencer will visit the school to teach the boys about the menopause. I mean, you know, it's interesting because I think I didn't know what the menopause... Actually, I don't know what the menopause is, really. I'll be honest. Like, I have a slight idea, I have a vague idea, but I certainly wasn't taught about that at school. I wasn't taught about various things like that. Evolution, wasn't taught that. Various things like that. So I think, in a way, it's quite good that kids learn about stuff that doesn't impact them directly. in the way that evolution hasn't impacted me.
Yeah, have you not happened to you? I'm torn on that because one, it's not. I don't think teenage boys necessarily need to. But then again, it's a lot more relevant than like stalactites, isn't it? We spent so much time on isosceles triangles, and stalactites. I'm like, when is this going to come up in the world? Do you know what I mean? And it didn't at all. It was all useless. I mean, barely went down a cave at all.
I think I'm on the side of the menopause here because I think that. No, that sounded wrong. But I think it's important that people learn things that are related to other people and realise that the world isn't all about them. And why shouldn't boys learn about the menopause?
Absolutely, they should learn about the menopause. 100%.
Yeah.
And I agree. I've never used a Bunsen burner since I was 14 years old. So.
I did once, but I don't talk about the. They call it arson, but whatever. Yeah, you're right. Never use it.
But do you think there will be a problem with boys, in particular teenage boys, if you try and address these sort of sensitive issues with them?
There'll be a lot of giggling.
There'll be a lot
epidemic
of giggling. They're not going to have it, are they?
It wouldn't work in my school, but nothing really did in my school.
But I don't think they talk about boys' issues to girls, to teenage girls. I mean, I used to teach at an all-girls school, and I don't think they did that necessarily. I tried teaching them Tom Sawyer, and they weren't having that. But you know, so I mean, I think there's double standards there. I think we could learn both ways, could we not?
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Okay, there, we've solved that then. We're going back to Cheryl then. You had a second question. No, not Cheryl. Kirsty. Sorry, I'm sorry, Kirsty.
That's okay.
I apologise.
So, do you think it's okay if your lover or boyfriend comes around to ask them to show a negative PCR test before you allow them in?
Okay, now, look, I'm really nervous about getting Nick started on this because I know that he has a few issues about this. But so, a lover or boyfriend comes around. Is it well? I think it certainly deadens the romantic mood a little bit, doesn't it? If you want to get them to stick something up their nose before they come round. But then on the other hand, I suppose if you're nervous about being contaminated by your lover, then there might be something in it. What do you guys think? I'm going to come to Nick first.
I've got in trouble talking about this, so I've got to be careful. But yeah, I was asked to take lateral flow tests before I saw someone, and they because they were quite concerned, and they had elderly relatives. They had other problems. They couldn't take the vaccine, so they were worried. And they said, "Oh, you take a lateral flow test every time you see me." And I thought it was a bit much, but they said to me, "Well, it's a choice." And I realised it's kind of a choice, but if I don't do it, I'm not allowed to see you. Then I realised, it's like vaccine passports. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to take the vaccine, but you'll lose your job. So I was being coerced.
So you think this is coercion?
But I can't really talk about that on live TV. But
you can talk about whatever you want.
So you were being asked, what were you being asked to take a test for? Someone was making.
It's just a dilemma.
Oh, it was just a general dilemma.
Yeah. I don't think this was real. I think it was a hypothetical.
It was real for me.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this, Hayden? Do you think there's any issues here?
Well, it was just making me think when you were saying that the official Chinese state policy is actually to put the swab not up the nose or the mouth, but up the bum.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's true, because it's a more accurate reading.
Is that right?
By about 50–60% more accurate, yeah.
So what would you do if someone said you have to do that before I see you, stick that up your bum?
Well, I was just saying you could incorporate it into your date. I don't know.
Right, I think this is going into some very dark areas that I didn't
do it anyway.
anticipate.
Just a bonus.
So what? No, but on this issue. All right, let's not. I'm really not going down.
This is the most alive they've been all night.
I know it is.
Level of this audience. We've been talking about intellectual issues. They're like, do more of the bum swab stuff.
It really depresses me that, you know. No, we're going to move off that because we're veering dangerously close to that Spanish bishop again. But I think the thing about this is, right, so, I mean, look, this is a broader question, though, isn't it, about in terms of, is something happening in society where we're starting to see each other as biohazards? Is there a kind of... No, but I think there is something to this. There's a kind of mistrust now where actually, you know, during the pandemic, I did start to notice this. At first I thought, oh, this is great, you know, everyone's respecting each other, the socially distancing, all of that. And then people sort of by instinct jump out of the way when you come near them. And I feel that this must have some kind of a psychological effect on the community. It must make us see each other differently. Is that, I mean, not going into the issues of the virus, but the psychological issues on a general scale. Is there something going on here? Are we becoming less trustful now?
At the beginning, for sure. I mean, I would always give someone a sort of, 2-metre berth when I walked through the park that was sort of running past me and got really annoyed when they would sort of breathe heavily next to me. But I don't really care anymore. It's all a myth, isn't it, the pandemic?
Of course it's not a myth.
Sorry, it's not.
For goodness, he's joking, by the way. I just have to emphasise.
The pandemic.
Just Chinese hay fever.
Chinese hay fever. OK, we're moving on to you, Nick. This is ridiculous. What do you think?
Well, yeah, that phrase "vectors of disease" got used a lot, didn't it? We started to see people as vectors of disease. I mean, I'm sort of germ-phobic, so I already kind of did. But I wash my hands.
You saw people as...
No, I just wash my hands a lot if I touch the tube or anything. But
Fair
you know
enough.
what I mean?
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I haven't been ill since 2019. Do it, guys. Develop OCD. But the point, it is terrible. We shouldn't see people like that. I try not to. And yeah, I'm against it generally.
Yeah,
against seeing people as vectors of disease, except comedians who probably are.
They absolutely.
So yeah, steer well clear of them.
And what are your views on vaccine passports? Since that seems to be the thing that's.
Are you seriously asking me my views on vaccine?
Well, I know your views on vaccine passports, but I don't think the audience
I'm
do.
vehemently against them. Of course, in all. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Libertarians in the house. No, how can you be in favour of vaccine? It's insane, absurd, illogical, authoritarian policy.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Hayden?
Don't we kind of already have vaccine passports? Because you can't really do anything or get in anywhere without showing your little vaccine thing. I mean, you can't go abroad, right, without showing your two
That's
jabs.
true.
So there kind of is a vaccine passport.
Yeah, but there's already been one introduced for international travel. Yeah, but that doesn't justify it's a good idea.
We're questioning the principle. I mean, my nervousness about all of this kind of stuff is I don't want to live in this kind of papers, please society. I don't like this idea of a two-tiered society where someone has to declare their medical history to get in. But that really, really makes me nervous. And I think, but then some people would counter that and say, yes, but hang on. We have had these sort of things in place for all sorts of countries where there are...
yellow fever argument. It's such a ridiculous argument.
Well, why is that a ridiculous argument?
Well, for so many reasons. One, because you weren't forced to put something into your body, right, which you would be with the vaccine. Two, because it's your choice to go to probably a fairly far-away country where they have yellow fever. So it's completely different to having a vaccine passport to go to Tesco. It's not even similar, or to be able to do your job or something. It's not vaguely similar. It's a ridiculous argument.
So, but by that logic, would you support vaccine passports for international travel relating to
No,
COVID?
I wouldn't either. Because
Why?
it's different again, because if you went to basically a developing world country, you'd expect to take a few things, so you try not to get malaria or something. That's very different from going to like France and having to take a new vaccine. Well, I wouldn't get into the vaccine, but you know what I mean? It is very different.
All right. Hayden, did you want to come in there?
Well, I don't understand. If Bill Gates has put a chip in all of us when we get the vaccine, why would we need the passport as well?
Good
Seems
point.
to just be doubling
Can
up.
I tell you why,
You've already
Hayden?
got the chip in you.
Yes,
Yeah.
because he hasn't put a chip in. That's what it is. You know, that's what's happened there. But I understand you think that because you also think he goes off and worships owls.
Yeah.
in his part
The other
time.
thing is, if you took a little jab against malaria or something, you weren't going to the country thinking, well, what if they all haven't taken it? That's the weird thing with the vaccine. Everyone has to take it. Have you noticed that?
No, I haven't. I think we should move on from this because we're getting perilously close to your conspiracy theories. I'm not worried about that. Well, I would like one more question, please. Now this question has come in anonymously. Oh, that's always interesting. Always makes me a bit nervous, that, though, when people say things anonymously. Is this you? OK. My husband snores. Should I suffocate him with my pillow or divorce him? Let's see why. Why is there not a third option there? What? I mean, what? So I can understand why you've remained anonymous there. Does anyone? And I also have to say that the floor manager at the back is pointing to who said it. But I'm absolutely not going to out anyone at all. I'm not going to out anyone. That's their issue. OK, I'm going to go to Hayden first with this. What do you do about a husband who snores? And really, homicide isn't the answer. Let's just say that quite clearly.
Well, it is effective as an answer, but you can't guarantee who your cellmate will be once you're... who may also snore and other things. Yes. My girlfriend snores, and I don't really mind it that much, but it can destroy marriages, I do know that.
But have you managed to zone it out, or is it something that you continually hear and you're constantly...
It just becomes part of every dream.
Is that... So you're constantly chased by droning bees?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, that's quite creepy. And it's
chased by a Reaper drone from the Afghan mountains.
That sounds absolutely... That sounds grounds for divorce to me. But you're, well, have you been
I've had a lot of terrible experience with this. I had an ex-girlfriend who snored very loudly. Initially, I tried custom-made earplugs that I got.
Yeah.
When that didn't work, I've just gone with celibacy. That's been my solution. Yeah.
But I think these things, you kind of zone them out after eventually. You know,
Nope.
No? OK, well, I did.
Developed chronic insomnia.
No, I think there's a way to just do it. I mean, I used to work at this boarding school, which had this chime, this bell that you go off every quarter of an hour, and you would think that would keep you awake, you know, and it didn't, because it just ended up... Maybe it did get incorporated into my dream.
Yeah.
Similarly, I was...
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, it was a bit like that, yeah. So I don't know what you should do. I don't know who asked that question, but what I would say is definitely... I think divorce is a bit much.
Get a different bedroom.
Don't you think?
The whole thing...
Bedroom?
Yeah, the whole thing of sleeping in the same bedroom, it's archaic. It came about in the Industrial Revolution due to
Are
poverty.
you serious?
I'm absolutely serious.
I agree.
He agrees.
Yeah.
Honestly, like rich people don't do it, probably.
Of course they do.
I doubt they do. They've got loads of different rooms. It's an archaic thing that came about from not having enough room. It doesn't work. There's loads of problems with it.
So
But
you're suggesting that married couples, or any couples,
Yes.
only sleep together because of a hangover from the Industrial Revolution. This is a traditional thing.
I read it in the papers once. And I'm certain it's true.
And it was to save money, effectively. That's all it was.
Yeah, they didn't have the space.
But but if you're in a loving relationship and you're saying, OK, but you've got to go and sleep in another part of the house, isn't that sending mixed messages?
It's very healthy.
I think think it's incredibly healthy, yeah.
This is back to the biohazards question again, isn't it? You just don't
no,
want to be
it's better
around...
for both of you. You can cuddle and stuff, but just, you know, you can't sleep with someone there. It's scientifically proven.
Well, you've just said that now, with no evidence whatsoever, but do you agree with this?
Yeah, I do. I agree that you don't want your lover to be your roommate, really. I mean,
no.
It's not sexy.
I think it's what I think actually, but on a serious note, I think one of the most important things that you need is sleep, and I think people don't understand this.
Is there no medical solution for snoring though?
No, there absolutely isn't.
Can they not just drill some holes through the
old school? Do you know what? I guess no one's ever tried that, Hayden. And I'm going to emphasise that viewers should not be trying that at home. That's a really bad idea.
But where should they be doing it?
I don't think anyone should be drilling anyone.
You said don't do it at home. Go to an expert, the drilling expert.
No, I think there are ways. There are things you can do. By the way, there are some fabulous earplugs you can get. I think you can sprinkle lavender on a pillow. I mean, it doesn't help the snoring, but it just makes things smell nice.
Or just become a monk.
Or just become a monk. I mean, your answer
all
to
the
everything is
responsibility back on the survivor. It needs to be the responsibility of the snorer.
No,
it's victim blaming.
Look, no, let's not get into that. But I do think ultimately we do have to remember sleep is really important. And you know those people who are really elderly and beautiful, right? When you see those really sort of good-looking people in their 70s, 80s, it's because they slept a lot, and that's the secret. And I'm just going to leave you with that because I think it's a really good tip. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when John Cleese cancelled the Cambridge Union before they could cancel him. See what he did there? We had rainbow zebra crossing causing more trouble, and a Spanish bishop decided to leave the clergy to trade in the bodily fluids of pigs. And I'd like to thank my lovely panel, Nick Dixon and Hayden Prowse, and my guests, Jasper Rees, Joe Bartosh, and Adrian Hart. And by the way, you at home can apply to be a part of this audience. And details of how you do that are at the bottom of the screen right now. So just go online, come along, join us, and we'll see you then. And if you want to hear more from James Lindsay, by the way, from my podcast, just check out Free Speech Nation, the podcast. The full hour-long interview is live now. You can access that wherever you download your podcasts usually. Thank you for watching. See you next week on Free Speech Nation. Bye-bye.
On Mark Dolan tonight, the former police officer Mark Williams Thomas, the man who exposed Jimmy Savile, is my Mark Meets guest at 10. Top royal journalist Ingrid Seward on the Queen's absence from the cenotaph today, plus Princess Diana remembered. America's opioid crisis. Could this problem come to Britain? We'll speak to a top doctor live from the US. Plus my all-star panel, including cricket legend Monty Panesar. And in my monologue, our fallen heroes died for freedom, but the fight goes on. See you at 9.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Big 3 hours for you tonight. The former police officer and investigative journalist Mark Williams-Thomas is my Mark Meets guest. He is the man who exposed Jimmy Savile, and he tells his amazing story at 10. In The Clash, is it okay to end your relationship if your partner puts on weight? Plus, is the American opioid crisis, with millions hooked on prescription painkillers, coming to our shores? We'll speak to a top US doctor tackling this problem live after 11. Are government ministers right to think the pandemic is all but over? As today's press are suggesting, we'll speak to top academic Dr. David Payton, who has crunched the numbers. Plus, my all-star panel, including cricket legend Monty Panesar. But first, the headlines with Tamsin.